Now for a bit of sport, as football final season approaches, there's often a lot of talk in workplaces about the performance of teams and players and who'll actually make the final series. But one visiting American academic has spent a lot of his time studying not just the professional athletes but the fans themselves. Professor Andy Markowits is visiting the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney from his base at the University of Michigan. And one of his research areas is women in sport and female fans, and he joins me now. Andy Markowits, what does your research show about female sports fans, how they watch sport, how they follow sport, for example?
Well, what it shows is that they've increased massively since the 1970s. They attend, their spectators almost to the same degree as men are, but they are much less in terms of watching things on television. And above all, also, they are watching events, and it's a finite thing. Once they go to a match or a game, after the game, it's over. And for men, I argue that's when actually the thing really starts. For men, it's not the game, but the post-game and the pre-game and the analyses and the this and the that. And that women are much less into. And women also, of course, go to big events, so the World Cup or the Champions League or the Super Bowl, but they are much less likely to become sort of really engaged in weekly or daily sports, kind of sports on the local level or on the league level.
Now you sound like, since you've been in Australia, like you've had a pretty good time. Come on, you've been to the Sydney Swans game yesterday, for example. You've been to the Wallabies and the All Blacks on Saturday night, the Bledisloe Cup. What did you observe there about female footy fans, rugby union and AFL?
Well, first of all, you know, this in in this kind of a line of work this is basically, I call it research.
Oh, yes.
So please, let's be clear about that. This is empirical work. What did I find? Well, I actually, the Wallaby All Black game was as expected because it's a big international game, and so people go, and it was like an international game in other codes as well. But what I found very interesting was the Swans game. And I actually knew already that Aussie rules, for historical reasons, has always involved women spectators to a much greater degree than any other of what I call hegemonic sports, namely sports that are really followed, not only played, but actually followed by millions of people. And this was borne out. I mean, I obviously didn't do the count, but I would say easily 45 or 50% was female. Clearly, the women were as much into the game as the men. What I found actually amazing was afterwards, when the pitch was open to the public, and it became like a Bruegel painting. You know, up in the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna, it was like, you know, all these skates, except it wasn't skates. You know, people running around, and I found it fascinating how they involved people. But ultimately, what I still would find interesting, and I can't do that research by just visiting these venues, is what do women and men really see? Okay? In other words, women will watch this game, but will they worry about it on Wednesday afternoon? Yeah. How will they talk to their friends about this? Is it part of their quotidian being? And I, certainly in the United States and in Western Europe, where my research is really based, find that that's where the big difference is.
So you're saying, like in a workplace, for example, on a Monday morning here in Australia, if I was to engage in a bit of sports talk with some of my colleagues, that I would be viewed, my contribution is viewed differently. I might have watched the game and I might have an opinion about whether that should have been a tackle or a try or something.
Fine, but I doubt whether you will in fact historicize it as much as you may. You know, oh, this reminds me of the tackle in 1964 when it happened against Collingwood, whatever, okay? Yeah. Moreover, it is, to you, it's a choice. It's not the essence of your identity. To men, it is. It's basically, as we argue in the book, I co-authored it with one of my wonderful students, as we argue at the end, when men talk sports, they don't talk sports, they talk man. It's a form of, it's a kind of, it's a link, okay, which, by the way, in some ways is a form of intimacy which is much less fraught with difficulty than politics, than economics, than religion, as long as it remains in the realm of knowledge and not that of passion. So clearly, if they, again, I don't know the rivalries here well enough, but let's say if a Manchester United fan finds out that he's actually conversing with a Liverpool fan, this may end up actually not being so congenial. Okay?
Indeed.
But basically, it really, for women, it's not, certainly in the United States, where sports, by the way, are much more statistical than in anywhere else. Our studies show that women don't know, and above all, don't much care about knowing the most intricate forms of batting average and on-base percentage and all these things which are essential to men's sports language.
Well, I know you're off to an NRL game tonight, the Tigers versus the Roosters, so I hope you enjoy that. Andy Markowits, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.